The fluorescent lights of the late-night convenience store buzzed overhead as Maya pressed herself against the magazine rack, her hands trembling so badly she could barely hold her phone. Through the smudged glass windows, she could see him, Derek, pacing back and forth beside his black sedan, his face twisted with that familiar rage that made her stomach clench with fear. 3 years. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of apologizing for things she hadn't done, of hiding bruises under long sleeves and covering split lips with careful excuses. And tonight, finally, she'd left. She'd packed one bag while he was at work, withdrew what little money she had from their joint account, and walked out of that apartment with nothing but the clothes on her back and a bus ticket to her sister's place 3 states away. But Derek had come home early. He'd caught her at the bus station, screaming her name across the parking lot, and she'd run. God, she'd run like her life depended on it, because it did. She'd ducked into the first open door she'd found, this little 24-hour store on a street corner she didn't recognize, in a part of town she'd never been to before. The young cashier behind the counter, a college-aged girl with purple streaks in her hair, had looked up from her phone when Maya burst through the door, breathless and wild-eyed. The girl's expression had shifted immediately from boredom to concern. Maya had tried to compose herself, grabbing a bottle of water she didn't want, pretending to browse the shelves while keeping one eye on the windows. But Derek wasn't leaving. He was out there, visible under the streetlight, checking his phone, looking up and down the street, waiting. Her bus was leaving in 40 minutes. She just needed him to go away. Just needed him to give up and leave, to think she'd gotten away somehow, that she wasn't worth chasing anymore. But Derek never gave up. That's what he'd always told her, usually right before. Maya forced the thought away and moved toward the counter on shaking legs. The store was empty, except for her and the cashier. Empty, except for... She'd noticed him when she first came in, but fear had pushed everything else from her mind. A man stood near the back of the store by the refrigerated section, tall and imposing in an expensive-looking black coat, dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He was looking at the energy drinks with an expression of faint distaste, as though the very existence of neon-colored beverages personally offended him. Maya approached the counter and set down the water bottle. The cashier rang it up, and Maya fumbled for her wallet, but her hands were shaking too badly. The bills scattered across the counter. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered, trying to gather them. "I'm so sorry, I just—" "Hey," the cashier said gently, her young face full of sympathy. "It's okay. Take your breath. Are you all right?" Maya opened her mouth to say yes, to lie the way she always lied, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "There's a man outside, in the parking lot. I can't leave while he's there. Can I stay here until he leaves? Please? I'll buy something else. Of course you can stay," the cashier said immediately, her hand reaching across the counter to briefly squeeze Maya's. "Stay as long as you need. Do you want me to call the police?" "No." The word came out too sharp, too quick. Derek was a cop. Not officially anymore. He'd been forced to resign 2 years ago after an incident, but he still had friends on the force. Friends who believed his version of things, who thought Maya was hysterical, dramatic, who'd told her more than once that maybe if she tried harder to be a good girlfriend, Derek wouldn't get so frustrated. The last time she'd tried to file a report, the officer had taken Derek aside for a man-to-man talk, and then suggested maybe Maya should think about anger management classes for herself. Okay, the cashier said, picking up on Maya's panic. "No police, but you can definitely stay. I'm here until 6 a.m. anyway." 6 a.m. Maya's bus would be long gone by then. But maybe that was okay. Maybe she could catch another one. Maybe she just needed to wait Derek out, let him think she'd slipped away somehow, gotten into a cab, disappeared into the city. Maybe... The bell above the door chimed. Maya's heart stopped. She spun around, certain it was Derek, certain he'd seen her through the window, certain this was it. But it wasn't Derek. It was the man from the back of the store. He moved with the kind of fluid grace that seemed almost out of place in the harsh fluorescent lighting, his expensive coat catching the light as he approached the counter. He was carrying a single energy drink. Apparently he'd made his peace with the neon beverages, and his eyes were the coldest shade of blue Maya had ever seen. Those eyes swept over her, taking in everything in a single glance. Her tear-stained face, her white-knuckled grip on the counter, the way she was positioned to see the parking lot through the windows. And something in his expression shifted, something that Maya couldn't quite read. He set the drink on the counter, reaching into his coat for his wallet, and that's when Maya saw it. The gun holstered at his side, just visible for a split second beneath the expensive fabric. She must have made a sound, some small gasp or whimper, because those blue eyes cut to her again, sharper this time. "I'm listening," he said, and his voice was like smoke and velvet, dark and smooth and utterly controlled. "From the line." Maya blinked, confusion cutting through her fear. "What?" "Your question," he continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "To the cashier. Can I stay here until he leaves?" "I heard you. I'm listening." The cashier glanced between them, clearly uncertain. The man pulled out his wallet, leather, thick with bills that probably cost more than everything Maya owned, and extracted a $100 bill, setting it on the counter. "Keep the change," he said to the cashier, then turned his full attention to Maya. "The man outside in the black sedan. He's the one you're hiding from." It wasn't a question. Maya found herself nodding anyway, her throat too tight for words. The man's expression didn't change, but something in the air around him seemed to shift, to become somehow colder and more dangerous. He moved to the window, casual, unhurried, as if he was simply looking out at the night. But Maya saw the way his eyes tracked Derek's movements, calculating, assessing. "He's getting impatient," the man observed, "checking his phone every 30 seconds, looking at the door. He knows you're in here." "Oh, God," Maya breathed. Of course Derek knew. Of course he'd seen her come in. He was just waiting, making her sweat, making her suffer. It was what he did best. "How long?" the man asked, still watching the window. "How long what?" "How long has he been hurting you?" The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd gotten so good at hiding it, at pretending, at making excuses. But this stranger had seen through everything in less than 5 minutes. "I don't know what you—" "Don't!" The single word cut through her attempted denial. He turned from the window to face her fully, and the intensity in those blue eyes made her breath catch. "I've seen enough broken bones and split lips to recognize the fear in someone's eyes when they're running from their abuser. So I'll ask again. How long?" Maya felt tears burning in her eyes. 3 years, she whispered. "Tonight was the first time I tried to leave." "And he found you?" "At the bus station. I ran. I ran." The man nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. He reached into his coat, that same coat where she'd seen the gun, and Maya tensed, but he pulled out a phone instead. Expensive, sleek, probably cost more than her rent. He made a call, holding the phone to his ear, his eyes still fixed on the parking lot. Someone answered immediately. "Victor," he said into the phone, his voice calm and controlled. "I need you at the corner store on 5th and Morrison. Now." A pause. "Yes, now. Bring Luca." Another pause. 5 minutes is too long. Make it 3. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, fear and hope warring in her chest. "Who was that?" "Insurance," he replied simply. Then, "What's your name?" "Maya." "Maya." He repeated it like he was tasting the word, testing its weight. "I'm Alexander, and you're going to walk out of here in about 3 minutes without being afraid of that man ever again." "I don't understand. How can you—" "Because," Alexander interrupted, and now there was something almost predatory in his smile. Something that should have frightened her, but instead made her feel safer than she'd felt in 3 years. "That man out there thinks he's dangerous. He thinks fear makes him powerful, but he has no idea what real danger looks like. The bell above the door chimed again, and this time Maya did gasp, pressing herself back against the counter. But it wasn't Derek. 2 men entered the store, both dressed in dark suits that screamed money and menace. They moved like predators, efficient and alert, and they went directly to Alexander without a word to the cashier or Maya. "Boss," the taller one said, his voice carrying a faint accent Maya couldn't place. Russian, maybe. "What do you need?" Alexander gestured toward the window. "Black sedan. Male, approximately 6'2", 200 pounds. Aggression issues, probable history of violence. He's been stalking Maya here, and I'd like to have a conversation with him about proper behavior." The 2 men looked out the window, then back at Alexander. The shorter one, built like a tank, with hands that looked like they could crush concrete, smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Just a conversation?" he asked, almost disappointed. "To start with," Alexander replied. "Victor, Luca, I want him to understand that Maya is under protection now. My protection. And if he so much as thinks about coming near her again..." He trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like a threat. Maya's mind was reeling. "I don't understand. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Alexander turned to her then, and his expression softened just slightly, the hard edges smoothing out. "I know enough. I know you asked a cashier if you could hide in a convenience store because you were too afraid to step outside. I know you're running from someone who hurt you badly enough to make you shake at the sound of a door opening. I know you have a bus to catch and nowhere else to go." He paused. "And I know that no one should ever be that afraid." Something in his voice made Maya think he understood fear more intimately than he was letting on. Not his own fear. She couldn't imagine this man being afraid of anything. But someone else's. Someone he'd known, maybe. Someone he'd failed to protect. "Victor, Luca," Alexander said, his attention shifting back to his men. "Go have that conversation. Make it memorable." The 2 men nodded and headed for the door. Maya watched through the window as they approached Derek's car. Watched Derek's expression change from anger to confusion to fear as these 2 massive, dangerous-looking men flanked his vehicle. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Derek's face going pale, see him nodding frantically, see him fumbling with his keys. "What are they telling him?" Maya asked, unable to look away. "That you belong to me now," Alexander said simply. "That if he comes near you again, if he even thinks about you again, they'll find him. And they're very good at finding people." "I don't belong to anyone," Maya said, some spark of defiance pushing through her fear. She'd just escaped one man who thought he owned her. She wasn't about to let another. "Poor choice of words," Alexander amended, and there was something almost like respect in his eyes. "You're under my protection. There's a difference. You're free to go wherever you want, whenever you want. But he'll never touch you again. He'll never even get close enough to frighten you. That's what I'm offering you." Outside, Derek's car engine roared to life. Victor and Luca stepped back, and the sedan peeled out of the parking lot like Derek couldn't get away fast enough. Maya watched it disappear around the corner, taillights fading into the distance, and felt something in her chest finally unclench. "He's gone," she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "He's gone," Alexander confirmed, "and he won't be back." The 2 men returned to the store, the bell chiming cheerfully above their heads as if they'd just been out for a pleasant evening stroll instead of threatening a man into fleeing the state. "He'll be on a plane to California by morning," Victor reported. "He has a cousin in San Diego he can stay with. He won't be a problem." "Good," Alexander said. Then to Maya, "When is your bus?" She checked her phone with shaking hands. 25 minutes. But I don't know if I should still... do you think he'll really leave? What if he comes back? What if... He won't come back, Alexander said with absolute certainty. But you're right to be cautious. Where were you going? Seattle. My sister lives there. Alexander nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Victor, arrange a car for Maya. Private. Direct to Seattle. Make sure the driver is someone we trust." "Wait, no!" Maya protested. "I can't. You've already done so much. I can't accept." "The bus station is where he found you the first time," Alexander pointed out. "Do you really want to go back there? Do you really want to spend the next 6 hours on a bus jumping at every sound, wondering if he's somehow following you?" He had a point. The thought of going back to that bus station, of sitting in that exposed waiting area, of being trapped on a bus with strangers, not knowing if Derek might somehow be on board or waiting at one of the stops. Her stomach turned at the very idea. "I don't have money for a private car," she admitted, hating how small her voice sounded. "I barely had enough for the bus ticket." "Did I ask if you had money?" Alexander's tone was gentle but firm. "Consider it a gift, or a loan if it makes you feel better. You can pay me back when you're settled, when you're safe, when you're ready. But right now, tonight, let me do this for you." Maya looked at him, really looked at him. This stranger who'd overheard her desperate question and decided to intervene, who'd called his people and sent them to threaten her abuser, who was now offering to send her across the country in private transport like it was nothing. She should be suspicious. She should be afraid. Every instinct should be screaming at her to run from this obviously dangerous man with his gun and his hired muscle and his cold blue eyes. But all she felt was grateful and exhausted and so tired of being afraid. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, thank you." Alexander's expression softened again, and he reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands that clearly knew violence. "You're stronger than you think, Maya," he said quietly. "Walking out tonight, running when you needed to, asking for help, that takes courage. Don't forget that." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and this time she didn't try to hide them. When was the last time someone had told her she was strong? When was the last time anyone had looked at her with anything other than pity or contempt? Victor stepped forward, his phone in hand. "Car will be here in 10 minutes. Driver's name is Marcus. He's done this run 100 times. He'll get her there safe." "Good," Alexander said, then turned back to Maya. "Give Victor your sister's address. He'll make sure the driver has it." Maya recited the address, watching as Victor typed it into his phone with thick fingers that seemed too large for the delicate task, but moved with surprising precision. What do you do?" Maya asked Alexander, curiosity finally breaking through her shock. "Why do you have people who can make someone leave town with just a conversation? Why do you carry a gun to buy energy drinks at midnight?" Alexander smiled, and it was the kind of smile that suggested she didn't really want to know the answer. "I'm in import-export," he said, which was clearly a lie, or at least a massive oversimplification. "Let's just say I have resources, and I don't like to see them go to waste, especially when they can help someone who needs it." The cashier, who'd been watching all of this with wide eyes and forgotten all about the abandoned energy drink on the counter, suddenly spoke up. Are you like a mob boss or something?" Luca barked out a laugh. Victor smiled. Alexander just looked amused. "I prefer independent businessman," he said dryly. Then, to Maya, "Does it matter?" And the strange thing was, it didn't. Not really. Maybe it should have. Maybe she should have been terrified, should have been running from this man and his casual violence and his clear disregard for normal rules. But all she could think about was how he'd listened to her desperate question, how he'd seen her fear and decided to do something about it, how he'd given her back something she'd thought was lost forever. The ability to not be afraid. "No," she said honestly. "It doesn't matter." A black car pulled up outside, sleek, expensive, tinted windows that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. A man got out from the driver's side, tall and professional in a dark suit, and stood waiting by the vehicle. "That's Marcus," Victor said. "He's ready when you are." Maya looked down at herself. She was still wearing the clothes she'd fled in, carrying nothing but her small backpack, with one change of clothes and her meager savings. Everything else she owned was still in that apartment with Derek, and she'd never get it back. But somehow, right now, that seemed okay. They were just things. She was getting out with her life, with her freedom, with a chance to start over. That was more than enough. "I should go," she said, but her feet didn't move. She looked at Alexander, this dangerous stranger who'd become her unlikely savior, and felt a strange reluctance to leave. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Alexander said. "You asked for help. That's harder than most people think." He pulled out his phone again and held it out to her. "Put your number in." Maya took the phone with shaking hands, typed in her number, and gave it back. Alexander saved it under her name, then sent her a text, just a period, nothing else, so she'd have his number too. "If you need anything," he said, "and I mean anything, a place to stay, money, someone to talk to, or just anything, you call me. No matter what time it is, no matter what you need. Understand?" Maya nodded, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I understand." "Good." He gestured toward the door. "Go. Marcus will take care of you. And Maya?" He waited until she looked him in the eyes. "You're going to be okay. This is the hardest part. Right now, tonight, it gets easier." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. Victor walked her to the car, and Marcus opened the back door with a professional nod. The interior was all leather and luxury, a world away from the dirty bus she'd been planning to take. Maya climbed in, setting her backpack on the seat beside her, and looked back through the window. Alexander was standing in the convenience store doorway, backlit by the fluorescent lights, watching her leave. Their eyes met, and he raised one hand in farewell. Maya raised hers back, then the car door closed, and Marcus was pulling away from the curb, and the store was disappearing behind them. "You comfortable, miss?" Marcus asked from the front seat, his voice gruff but kind. "It's about a 6-hour drive. There's water in the compartment next to you, and blankets if you get cold. You just let me know if you need anything." "Thank you," Maya managed, her voice thick with tears she didn't try to hide anymore. She pulled out her phone and looked at the text Alexander had sent. That single, meaningless period that somehow meant everything. Then she opened a new message and typed, "Thank you. For everything. I'll never forget what you did for me tonight." She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then leaned back against the leather seat and watched the city lights blur past the window. Somewhere back there, Derek was probably on his way to the airport, too afraid of Alexander's men to ever come back. Somewhere ahead of her, in Seattle, her sister was waiting, ready to help her rebuild her life from nothing. And somewhere in between, in a convenience store she'd stumbled into out of sheer desperation, a dangerous man with cold blue eyes had decided she was worth saving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. "You don't need to forget. You need to remember. Remember that you're stronger than your fear. Remember that you deserve safety and kindness. Remember that you asked for help, and help came. Take that with you, Maya. You're going to need it." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but for the first time in 3 years, they weren't tears of fear or pain. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of something that felt almost like hope. She typed back, "I'll remember. I promise." His response came quickly. "Good. Now rest. You have a long drive ahead of you." Maya smiled despite her tears and tucked the phone back into her pocket. She pulled one of the blankets over herself, soft and warm, and let her eyes drift closed as the car carried her toward safety, toward her sister, toward a future that was finally hers. She was almost asleep when her phone buzzed one more time. Groggily, she pulled it out and looked at the screen. Another text from Alexander. "P.S. If you ever find yourself in New York, call me. I'd like to take you to dinner, somewhere nicer than a convenience store." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, felt something flutter in her chest that she hadn't felt in so long. She'd almost forgotten what it was like. Hope, yes. But also, possibility. The possibility of something good, something gentle, something that didn't hurt. She knew she wasn't ready for that yet. Knew she had a long road ahead of her, Healing to do, a life to rebuild from scratch. But someday, maybe someday, she texted back. When I'm ready. I'll wait, came the immediate response. I'm very patient when something's worth waiting for. Maya fell asleep with a smile on her face for the first time in 3 years, the phone still clutched in her hand, the city lights giving way to highway darkness as Marcus drove her toward her new life. 3 months later, Maya stood in front of the mirror in her sister's apartment, adjusting the collar of her new blouse. She'd gotten a job. Nothing fancy, just administrative work at a local accounting firm, but it was hers. She'd earned it with her own interview, her own skills, her own merit. Not because someone was controlling where she could work or who she could talk to. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Maya. Alexander's voice was unmistakable even through the phone line. Smooth and dark, and somehow both dangerous and comforting at the same time. Alexander, she breathed, her heart suddenly beating faster. Hi. I didn't expect to hear from you. I told you I was patient, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. But I thought I should check in. Make sure you're settled. Make sure you're safe. I am, she said, and realized it was true. I'm good. Really good, actually. I got a job. I'm staying with my sister. I'm okay. I'm glad, he said, and the warmth in his voice made her chest tighten. And the problem from before? He meant Derek. No contact, Maya said. Nothing. It's like he disappeared. Good. That's very good. A pause. So, tell me, Maya, are you ready yet? Ready for what? That dinner I mentioned. Somewhere nicer than a convenience store. Maya looked at herself in the mirror, at the woman who'd walked out of an abusive relationship, who'd asked a stranger for help, who'd accepted that help even though it came from someone dangerous. At the woman who'd started over from nothing and was building something real and good in hers. Was she ready? Really ready? I might be, she said carefully, but I need to know something first. Ask me anything. Why did you help me that night? Really help me, not just, why did you do all of that for a complete stranger? The silence on the other end of the line stretched out for so long that Maya thought maybe he'd hung up. But then he spoke, and his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it, almost vulnerable. My mother, he said finally. When I was 15, she tried to leave my father. He was not a good man. She made it as far as a bus station before he found her. She didn't make it any farther than that. Another pause. I was too young to help her then. Too weak, too powerless. But I'm not that boy anymore, Maya. And when I heard you asking that cashier if you could hide until he left, I heard my mother's voice. I saw her fear, and I couldn't walk away. Maya felt tears burning in her eyes again. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Just be safe, be happy. Build the life she never got to have. That's all I want. Is that really all you want? Maya asked, surprising herself with her boldness. No, Alexander admitted. I want that dinner. I want to hear about your new job and your sister and how you're doing. I want to make sure you're really okay. And maybe... He trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe I want to get to know the woman who was brave enough to ask for help. The woman who trusted a dangerous stranger because she knew she needed to get out. The woman who's building a new life from nothing. That woman sounds like someone worth knowing. Maya smiled, feeling something warm unfold in her chest. She is, she said. And she'd like to have dinner with you. When can you come to Seattle? I can be there this weekend, Alexander said immediately. If that's not too soon. It's not too soon, Maya said, and she meant it. Alexander arrived in Seattle on a Friday evening, and Maya met him at a restaurant downtown, not too fancy, not too casual, just a quiet place with good food and soft lighting where they could actually talk. He was waiting at the table when she arrived, standing when he saw her, and Maya was struck all over again by how he looked. expensive suit, perfectly tailored. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have sold magazines. Those cold blue eyes that warmed when they landed on her. Maya, he said, and the way he said her name made her feel like it was something precious. Alexander, she replied, letting him pull out her chair. They ordered wine. He chose a bottle that probably cost more than her weekly salary, and then they talked. Really talked. About her job, about her sister, about Seattle and how different it was from the city she'd fled. About his work. He didn't give many details, but she got the impression his import-export business involved a lot of late nights and difficult decisions and people who were both loyal and dangerous. Do you ever regret it? She asked over dessert. The life you lead, the things you have to do. Alexander considered this, swirling the wine in his glass. Every day, he admitted. But it's the life I chose, and it's given me the resources to help people when they need it. Like you. I'm not sure that one good deed balances out whatever else you do. Neither am I, he said honestly. But it's something. Maya reached across the table and took his hand. That hand that she knew could be so dangerous, could hurt and threaten and intimidate, but had only ever been gentle with her. It was everything to me, she said quietly. That night, what you did, it was everything. His fingers tightened around hers. You would have found a way out regardless. You were already running. You already had your bus ticket. You already knew what you needed to do. But I was so scared, Maya whispered. And you made it so I didn't have to be scared anymore. You'll never have to be scared again, Alexander said, and it sounded like a vow. Not while I'm here. They left the restaurant together, walking through the Seattle streets as rain began to fall. Just a light drizzle, the kind that made the city lights reflect on wet pavement like stars. Alexander offered her his coat, and she accepted, wrapping herself in expensive fabric that smelled like him. Something dark and complex and masculine. Can I see you again tomorrow? He asked when they reached her sister's building. Or is that too presumptuous? You can see me tomorrow, Maya said. And the day after that, if you're staying. I'm staying, Alexander said immediately. As long as you want me to. Maya looked up at him, at this dangerous, complicated man who'd saved her life with a phone call and 2 hired guns, who'd sent her to safety in a private car, who'd waited 3 months before calling because he wanted her to be ready, who looked at her like she was something precious and breakable and strong all at once. She stood on her toes and kissed him. It was just a brief press of lips, nothing deep or demanding, just a kiss. A thank you. A maybe. A possibility. When she pulled back, Alexander's eyes had darkened, and he was looking at her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. That was unexpected, he said, his voice rough. Was it? Maya asked, feeling braver than she'd felt in years. I thought you said you were patient when something was worth waiting for. I did say that, Alexander agreed, but I didn't think, he trailed off, then smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine and almost boyish. You're full of surprises, Maya. Good, she said. So are you. He kissed her forehead gently, then stepped back. Good night, Maya. I'll call you tomorrow. Good night, Alexander. She watched him walk away, his expensive coat draped over his arm now, and felt something settle in her chest. Something like peace. Something like happiness. Something like the beginning of forever. 6 months after that, Maya stood in a different apartment, one she shared with Alexander now, in a different city, in a different life. She'd transferred her job remotely, and Alexander had insisted she didn't need to work at all. But she'd kept it anyway. She needed to be her own person, needed to know she could take care of herself. But she also needed this, needed him, needed the man who'd heard her desperate question in a convenience store and decided she was worth saving, who'd waited for her to be ready, who'd built a life with her that was nothing like the nightmare she'd escaped from. Alexander came up behind her as she stood at the window watching the city lights, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured into her hair. "That night," Maya said. "At the store. How different everything is now. Better or worse?" "So much better," she said, turning in his arms to face him. "You know I love you, right?" "I do know," Alexander said, his cold blue eyes warm when they looked at her. "Because you tell me every day. And you don't mind? Mind?" He laughed, a real laugh, the kind he saved just for her. "Maya, hearing you say these words is the best part of my day. Every day." "Good," she said, then hesitated. "Because I have something to ask you." "Anything. That business you do, the dangerous stuff, the stuff you don't like to talk about." Alexander tensed slightly. "Yes?" "I want to help." He pulled back, searching her face. "What?" "Not the violent stuff," Maya clarified quickly. "But the other things. The people you help. Like you helped me. I know there are others. Victor mentioned it once, about the women you've sent to safe houses, the families you've relocated. I want to help with that. I want to be part of it." "Maya," Alexander began, but she cut him off. "I know what it's like to need help and not know where to find it. I know what it's like to be afraid, to be desperate, to have nowhere to turn. And I know what it feels like when someone offers you a hand out of that darkness. Let me be that hand for someone else. Please." Alexander looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled, that rare, genuine smile, and kissed her forehead. "You're remarkable," he said. "Do you know that?" "Absolutely remarkable." "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes. We'll start tomorrow. I have 3 cases that could use someone with your perspective." He paused, then added, "But Maya, this life, it's dangerous. There are people who would hurt you to get to me. Are you sure you want to be part of this?" Maya thought about Derek, about the fear she'd lived with for 3 years, about the way she'd hidden in a convenience store and whispered a desperate question to a stranger. She thought about the life she'd built since then, about the strength she'd found in herself, about the man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth saving. "I'm sure," she said. "We're in this together." "Together," Alexander agreed, and kissed her properly this time, deep and thorough and full of promise. And Maya kissed him back, knowing that she'd finally found her home. Not in a place, but in this, in the arms of a dangerous man who'd heard her desperate question and decided she deserved an answer. Who'd given her safety and time and space to heal. Who'd waited for her to be ready and then built a life with her worth living. She'd asked the cashier if she could stay until he left. She'd never imagined that the answer would change everything. But sometimes, the right person hears you at exactly the right moment. And sometimes, desperate questions have unexpected answers. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most dangerous man in the room turns out to be exactly what you need to feel safe again. "I love you," Maya whispered against his lips. "I love you too," Alexander replied. "Forever." And this time, when someone promised her forever, Maya actually believed it. Because this time, forever was hers to keep. 3 weeks after Maya started working with Alexander's network, helping relocate families and connect vulnerable women with resources, she walked into their apartment at 11 p.m. and found Alexander standing in the living room with blood on his shirt. Not his blood. She knew immediately it wasn't his because he was standing too easily, moving too fluidly as he poured himself a drink with steady hands. But there was blood splattered across his white dress shirt, dark spots that looked black in the low lighting, and his jacket was crumpled on the floor like he'd torn it off the moment he'd walked through the door. "Alexander?" Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. He turned, and his face was a mask she'd never seen before. Cold, empty, dangerous in a way that reminded her viscerally that this man had killed people. Had probably killed someone tonight. "You should be asleep," he said, his voice flat. "It's 11. "I was waiting for you." Maya set down her bag carefully, her mind racing. "What happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "There's blood on your shirt." I'm handling it. Alexander. I said I'm handling it, Maya. His voice was sharp now, cutting, and Maya flinched despite herself. The flinch was involuntary, instinctive, a response burned into her body by 3 years with Derek. And the moment it happened, the moment her shoulders hunched and her head ducked, she saw Alexander's expression shatter. God, he breathed, setting down his drink with shaking hands. God, Maya, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. I would never. I know, Maya said quickly, forcing herself to straighten to meet his eyes. I know you wouldn't. It's just reflex. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Alexander stayed where he was, giving her space, and she could see him physically trying to pull himself together. This is my fault. I shouldn't have snapped at you. I shouldn't have come home like this. I should have cleaned up first, should have made sure you didn't see. See what? Maya asked. See that your work is dangerous? See that sometimes you have to do things that aren't clean or easy? Alexander, I knew what you were when I fell in love with you. You don't have to hide it from me. Yes, I do, Alexander said roughly. Because you've seen enough darkness, Maya. You've lived through enough fear. You don't need to see mine, too. Maya crossed the room slowly, carefully, giving him time to protest or pull away. But he stood frozen as she approached, his eyes tracking her movement like he was afraid she was going to run. She stopped in front of him and took his hands, those dangerous hands that had only ever been gentle with her, and felt them trembling. Tell me what happened, she said quietly. Maya? Tell me. Alexander closed his eyes, his jaw working. When he opened them again, they were haunted. Derek came back. The name hit Maya like a physical blow. What? He came back, to Seattle. He found out where you were working, where you were living. He had a gun. Alexander's hands tightened on hers. Victor got wind of it 3 hours ago. One of our contacts saw him asking questions at your old office, showing people your picture. We tracked him down before he could get to you. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear over it. And I took care of it. Took care of it how? Does it matter? Yes, Maya said, and she was surprised to find she meant it. Yes, it matters. What did you do, Alexander? He looked at her for a long moment, and she could see the war playing out behind his eyes. The desire to protect her from the truth versus the knowledge that she deserved honesty. I broke his arm, Alexander said finally, his voice empty of emotion. Both legs. I made sure he understood that if he ever came near you again, if he ever even thought about you again, I would kill him. Then I put him on a plane to Florida with enough money to disappear and enough fear to make sure he stays disappeared. Maya felt dizzy. You tortured him. I hurt him, Alexander corrected. The same way he hurt you. The same way he was planning to hurt you again. He had your address written down, Maya. He had a schedule of when you left for work, when you came home. He'd been watching you for days, and I didn't know. I didn't protect you. You did protect me, Maya said. You stopped him before he could shoot you in our apartment lobby, Alexander finished harshly. Before he could follow you to work and corner you in the parking garage. Before he could finish what he started 3 years ago. That's not protection, Maya. That's luck. And I don't deal in luck. So what are you saying? Alexander pulled his hands away from hers, turning back to his drink. I'm saying this life isn't safe for you. I'm saying you being with me makes you a target. I'm saying Derek found you because people know you're mine, and now every enemy I have knows they can get to me through you. So what? Maya's voice was rising. You want me to leave? You want to send me away somewhere safe where I can spend the rest of my life alone and looking over my shoulder? I want you alive, Alexander said, and there was something broken in his voice. I want you safe. I want you to have the life you deserve, not this constant danger, not this fear, not you? Maya finished. That's what you're really saying, isn't it? You want me to leave you. I want you to be happy. I am happy. With you. Here. Maya moved around to face him, forcing him to look at her. Do you think I don't know this life is dangerous? Do you think I'm naive enough to believe that loving you comes without risk? I know what I signed up for, Alexander, and I'm still here. You shouldn't be. That's not your decision to make, Maya said fiercely. I'm not some fragile thing you need to protect from reality. I survived Derek. I survived 3 years of abuse, of fear, of thinking I would never get out. I survived, and I rebuilt myself, and I chose you. I chose this life. You don't get to take that choice away from me. Even if that choice gets you killed? Even then, Maya said, and meant it. Because a life without you, hiding somewhere safe and alone, that's not living. That's just existing. And I'm done just existing. Alexander stared at her, and she could see the moment something in him broke open. He reached for her, pulling her against him hard enough that she gasped, burying his face in her hair. I can't lose you, he whispered. I can't. You're the only good thing I have, Maya. The only pure thing in this entire corrupt life. If something happened to you because of me, it won't, Maya said, wrapping her arms around him despite the blood on his shirt. Because you'll protect me, the same way you protected me that first night. The same way you've protected me every day since. And I'll protect you too. You can't. I can, Maya interrupted. Maybe not with guns or violence or threats, but I can protect you from yourself, from the guilt, from the belief that you don't deserve something good. That's my job now, Alexander. Reminding you that you're more than the darkness, that you're the man who heard a desperate question and decided to answer it, that you're worth loving. Alexander pulled back enough to look at her face, his eyes searching hers. You really believe that? I know that, Maya corrected. And if Derek coming back taught us anything, it's that hiding doesn't work. Running doesn't work. The only thing that works is standing together and refusing to let fear win. He could come back again. Then we'll handle it again. Other enemies could target you. Then you'll stop them. Maya. No, she said firmly. No more arguments. No more trying to push me away from my own good. We're in this together, remember? You told me we were partners. We are partners, Alexander said. But... Maya kissed him, cutting off whatever protest he was about to make. She kissed him hard and deep, tasting the whiskey on his lips and the fear beneath his control, and when she pulled back, his eyes were blazing. I'm not leaving, she said. Not tonight. Not ever. So you can either accept that and work with me to make this life as safe as possible, or you can keep trying to push me away and I'll just keep coming back. Your choice. Alexander laughed, short and sharp, and it was almost a sob. You're impossible. I'm stubborn, Maya corrected. There's a difference. How are you so brave? Alexander asked, cupping her face in his hands. How are you not terrified right now? I am terrified, Maya admitted. I'm terrified that Derek almost found me. I'm terrified that there might be others. I'm terrified that loving you means living in danger. But I'm more terrified of losing you. I'm more terrified of going back to that half-life I had before, where I was too afraid to ask for help, too afraid to trust anyone, too afraid to live. You gave me my life back, Alexander. I'm not giving it up now. Alexander kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Soft kisses that felt like promises. I'll protect you, he murmured. I'll do whatever it takes. More security, better monitoring. I'll have Victor assign someone to shadow you when I can't be there. Okay, Maya said. Whatever you need to feel better about this. But I'm not leaving. You're not leaving, Alexander agreed, and this time it didn't sound like a question or a fear. It sounded like acceptance. They stood there in the dim living room, holding each other, while outside the city hummed with its usual nighttime chaos. Maya could feel Alexander's heartbeat gradually slowing, feel the tension draining from his muscles as he accepted that she wasn't going anywhere. "I need to shower," he said finally. "Get this blood off." "I'll help you," Maya said, and when he started to protest, she added, "We're partners, remember? That means all of it. The good parts and the hard parts and the bloody parts, too." Alexander looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, partners." They went to the bathroom together, and Maya helped him peel off the ruined shirt, helped him wash the blood from his hands and chest. The water ran red in the shower, swirling down the drain, carrying away the evidence of what he'd done to protect her. When they were clean and dry and dressed in comfortable clothes, Alexander pulled Maya into bed and held her like she might disappear if he let go. "I love you," he said into the darkness, "more than I've ever loved anything." "I love you too," Maya replied, "and we're going to be okay. Both of us. Together." "Together," Alexander echoed. And as Maya drifted off to sleep in his arms, she thought about that night in the convenience store. About the desperate question she'd asked a cashier, about the dangerous stranger who'd been listening from the line. She'd asked if she could stay until he left. She'd never imagined she'd end up staying forever. But here she was, not hiding, not running, but standing her ground with a man who'd given her back her courage and her life. Here she was choosing danger and love over safety and loneliness. Here she was, finally, truly free. Because freedom wasn't about hiding from threats or living without fear. Freedom was about choosing your own life, your own path, your own person to stand beside when the darkness came. And Maya had made her choice. 2 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Alexander made pancakes while Maya sat at their kitchen counter reading the newspaper. It was domestic and ordinary and perfect, and Maya couldn't help but smile at the sight of this dangerous man carefully flipping pancakes with intense concentration. "What?" Alexander asked, catching her smile. "Nothing," Maya said. "Just, I'm happy." "Good," Alexander said, sliding a plate in front of her. Then, casually, like it was nothing, "Marry me." Maya's fork clattered against the plate. "What?" "Marry me," Alexander repeated, and now he was pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, setting it on the counter between them. "I was going to do this properly, with dinner and flowers and a romantic speech, but I've realized something." "What's that?" Maya asked, her heart racing. "Every moment with you is the right moment," Alexander said simply, "and I don't want to wait anymore. I want you to be my wife. I want everyone to know you're mine, and I'm yours. I want to build a real life with you, not just survive day to day, but actually live. So yes, Maya, will you marry me?" Maya opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was a ring, not huge or ostentatious, but beautiful, a single perfect diamond that caught the morning light. "Yes," she said, and she was crying and smiling at the same time. "Yes, absolutely, yes." Alexander slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made just for her, like everything in her life had led to this moment, this man, this choice. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life keeping you safe," Alexander promised, "and happy, and loved." "I know," Maya said. "And I'm going to spend the rest of mine reminding you that you deserve all of that too." They kissed across the counter, pancakes forgotten, the morning sun streaming through the windows of their apartment. And Maya thought, not for the first time, that asking for help that night in the convenience store had been the bravest thing she'd ever done. Because brave wasn't about not being afraid. Brave was being terrified and asking anyway. Brave was trusting a stranger when you had no reason to trust anyone. Brave was choosing love even when love came with danger. And Maya had been brave enough to ask a simple question. "Can I stay here until he leaves?" She just never expected the answer would be, "Stay forever." But that's exactly what she was going to do.